To look at something here. There's Joan Walsh as well. Thank you for joining us. Let me. So I want you to look at something that was said over the weekend in Iowa by Congresswoman Bachmann. Here she is.
We know there was slavery that was still tolerated when the nation began. We know that was an evil, and it was a scourge and a blot and a stain upon our history. But we also know that the very founders that wrote those documents worked tirelessly until slavery was no more in the United States. And I think it is high time that we recognize the contribution of our forebears who worked tirelessly, men like John Quincy Adams, who would not rest until slavery was extinguished in the country.
Well, I don't know what to make of that, Sal. That's balloon head. That's not what our history was founded on. We founded on a Constitution which includes treating slaves as three-fifths of a person. It went on all the way to the Civil War. We had compromise after compromise trying to avoid a war. We went to war and lost 600,000 people in the worst catastrophe in our history because slavery continued through the 1860s and only ended because of that war. And here's this woman you've made your spokesperson saying that somehow the founding fathers dealt with it. That's the one thing they did not deal with. That was the horrible compromise that was at the heart of our Constitution. Why do you put someone like this forward who is a balloon head, who knows no American history? It's a ridiculous decision you guys have made. Do you know how little this woman knows about our history?
I think Michelle Bachmann is been one of the best.
Did you just hear that stuff? Did you just hear her? Do you want me to play it again? We could rub it in, Sal. It's horrendous. What do you make of it?
I heard what she said, but
what's she talking about?
What she's trying, I think what she's talking about is that we cannot continue to spend money as recklessly as we have done.
That's not what she just said. She said the founding fathers got rid of slavery. Why would you say that? Why, every high school kid has been to Mount Vernon and seen the slave quarters. What are you talking? Jefferson had slaves. All those guys had slaves. I know they were great men in other regards, but they never got rid of slavery. It's right in the Constitution. And here's this woman waving the Constitution around, powing around with Scalia, and she doesn't even know what the Constitution had in it. The treatment of slaves, African Americans, as three-fifths of people. That's in our history. You can't take it out. Explain to me what this woman's talking about.
I think she's just using that as an illustration to point out that I think Americans are concerned today that their children and grandchildren are not going to have the same opportunities of the American dream because we've increased our debt to a dangerous extent.
That's how she talks. She goes on this tape. No matter what you ask her, she goes on a tape. I want to ask you about slavery, sir. Sal, you know when slavery ended. It ended with the Civil War, right?
Well, some kind of slavery ended with the Civil War.
What do you mean some kind of slavery ended with? Why are you hedging?
No, I'm not hedging on it. I'm saying that.
When did slavery end in America? When did it become illegal? When did the 13th Amendment get passed?
Well, sure. I mean, that's a different question from when we've had to deal with our racial issues in this country.
No, the simple question to you, sir, and I know you have an IQ.
I don't think that's what she's talking about.
She said slavery ended under the founding fathers.
I don't think that's what she meant. I mean, I think she meant that if we don't get control of our government now, the opportunities of our children. You're covering.
You made a terrible decision. You put a person out there that has no concept of American history. I'm reminded of what Steve Schmidt said about Sarah Palin. She doesn't know anything. This is worse. This is claiming something that never happened. We have a problem. Slavery and race are the San Andreas fault of American history, and you're denying it was there.
No, I think she's trying to illustrate a point.
Joan, you take over this witness. I find him hopeless. I know he knows better. He's covering for somebody who knows nothing. Go ahead, Joan.
You know, Sal has hitched his start at the Tea Party. Sal is a longtime Republican entrepreneur out here in California who's worked for mainstream Republicans. He decided a few years ago he was going to go with the Tea Party and ride the Tea Party, and now he's kind of stuck, you know. The other thing, Chris, I want to point out one more thing that Michelle Bachmann said that's related to her thoughts on slavery. She also said that we were a country that it didn't matter your economic status, it didn't matter what country you came from. That's ludicrous too, Chris. I mean, even for white men, there were property requirements to vote in the early states. Up until 1830, we had some white men had property requirements. We know that immigrants were bad. Catholics. No, don't interrupt me. You had plenty of time to talk. You have plenty of time to talk. I'm now talking. Nativism attacked Irish Catholics, German Catholics, burned down churches and convents. We had the Chinese Exclusion Act for 60 years kept Chinese people out of this country. So this happy garbage version of history, I love our country, Chris. I know that what we've fought to do is make it better and better and better, and we are trying to do that. But to say that it's always been easy and it's always been equal, that lets them propose policies that profoundly hurt black people, that hurt immigrants, that hurt poor and working class people, because they have this notion that everyone's always been equal, which is garbage.
Okay, I want to give Sal all the time you need, sir. Explain the history of American slavery as you know it.
This is not about it. I mean, why do you want to keep changing the subject?
Because we're talking about your spokesperson tonight that you have designated.
Well, that's right. And what our spokesman is talking about is the fact that our spending is unsustainable, our national debt is skyrocketing, and we got to get on top of that.
No, you're trying to teach some kind of new religion of America that has to do with the infallibility of our founding fathers, some sort of new, almost scriptural notion of American history that somehow goes back to some perfection time that we're trying to recover. You guys are trying to sell that everything was perfect back in the Federalist period, back in the late 18th century, so that you can keep saying we got to go back to that, where everybody had a musket and everybody had a small farm and everything was perfect.
No,
that's what you're trying to sell. And even so, and you have scrubbed our history of slavery. I think it's a desecration.
I don't think that's...
Well, I'm going to give you a chance. One more chance. 30 seconds. What's the history of slavery?
I don't think that's what anybody's saying. I
want to ask you what you think, Sal, of slavery. What was it? Just describe it.
I think our founding fathers developed a document, the Constitution of the United States, that served America and has served the world for freedom for 200 and something years.
Why do you guys talk like you're on hypnosis? Why can you answer a question? Are you hypnotized? Can you answer a question?
Well, no,
what's the history of slavery in America?
Your question is irrelevant to what the issue is of the day.
Well, the issue of the day is decreed by this speech by your candidate is slavery and its history. She set the mark here. Joan Last thought we can't. Poor Sal is under the same kind of rule, apparently, that a lot of Tea Party people is look at the camera and repeat the speech.
Well, and also, you know, if people really cared about debt, if people well, then why did you not have a Tea Party movement when George Bush was spending down the Clinton surplus, $200 billion a year surplus, and George Bush left behind a $1.2 trillion budget deficit? We wouldn't have a Tea Party movement if it weren't for a fact that people were dissatisfied with the Republican and
I think you got to find another horse, Sal.
That's
You're a smart guy.
It came when we had a Democratic
This one's terrible. Anyway, thank you, Joan Walsh. Thank you, Sal. I know you're 10 times smarter than this person you put up there. Anyway, up next, the president will talk tonight.